snowy and fantastic morning. My name is Liz Loeb. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of the Kaleo Center for Faith, Justice, and Social Transformation. And I'm going to talk for a few minutes. I'm going to do housekeeping. I'm going to talk to you about the Kaleo Center. I'm going to invite you to make a contribution to the Kaleo Center, and then I'm going to introduce Susan. How does that sound? Excellent. So, if you haven't seen the movie Mean Girls, or if you don't know Ryan Croning, who's an amazing event producer around town, on Wednesdays we wear pink. That was the first point of housekeeping. Other housekeeping. There are bathrooms out there. I think those bathrooms have gender signs on them. Please use the bathroom that most affirms your identity and expression. I know there are also gender-neutral bathrooms upstairs, and single-stall bathrooms upstairs.
One downstairs.
And there's one downstairs. That's fabulous. Thank you so much to the Springhouse Ministries Center, and specifically to Lyndale UCC, which is an open and affirming community that works towards justice and towards deeper connection, for hosting us today. Let's see, very important housekeeping. We are filming Susan and me right now on Facebook Live. Tweet, the Facebook, share, let the people know. But if for any reason, I mean any reason, you want to make sure that you would not be on camera, and we're not going to turn the camera this way, but just to make certain, sit in this section and we'll make sure that your image is not broadcast in any way. Does that sound good? Any questions about that? Awesome. Any other questions about housekeeping? We'll end at 10:45, get up, get coffee, aha, I know what I forgot. People will be coming in because there is snow and parking in the morning. Please welcome them. Invite somebody to sit next to you, make a gesture. We want folks to come in when they can and be part of this. So the Kaleo Center. The Kaleo Center for Faith, Justice, and Social Transformation, which I am so thrilled to be a part of, has been around for 7 years. And we work to build beloved community out of multiple and diverse faith traditions, spiritual practices, faith communities, so that we can act in greater solidarity for liberation. And we do that through concrete action in the world. We do that in two main ways day to day. We train people who are in seminary as faith leaders from diverse traditions. We're housed at United Theological Seminary, which is a pro-LGBTQ, multi-denomination, multi-faith seminary. And if you've ever wanted to talk about seminary, and believe me, I am surprised on a daily basis that I work for a seminary, technically. But if you've ever... It's fascinating. If you've ever thought about a degree program, we have tons of scholarship and financial aid and a really creative intellectual community that there's lots of ways to dip your toe in and see if that's something that draws you in the world. So what we do at United is we train faith leaders in the praxis, the merging of theory and practice of social transformation of community organizing. And out in the world, we work with multiple communities. Hello, come on in, welcome. We work with multiple communities and with multiple organizations to really ask, what would it mean for folks motivated by their conscience, by their faith, to show up for frontline movements towards liberation, especially movements that are led by the people most impacted by the systems of oppression we seek to change, Black folks, brown folks, Native folks, queer folks, trans folks, and all of the intersections among that. And it has been, hello, welcome. Come on in. Such a magnificent journey to keep figuring out every day what that means. Enough about the Kaleo Center. What I really need to do is to ask you to support us. Because something that we've realized as the Kaleo Center is that we are a meaningful and significant place for people to find one type of political and spiritual home. And that if we rely on outside funding to make that possible, we will not be able to write our own agenda. That we won't be able to do this in a way that centers relationship and connection, which if we're not doing that, anything else we're doing isn't going to work. And so we're launching an ambitious new program where we're going to ask every single person who interacts with the Kaleo Center in some way to become a sustaining member with a financial contribution of any amount every month. And I know we live in the deep inequality and violence of capitalism. And there could be a lot, and I am committed to changing that with my life forever. And so there's folks in the room for whom a monthly contribution isn't something you can do. That is fabulous. But if you are somebody in this room who could make a monthly contribution, whether it's $5, whether it's $50, that is how, as a community, we will write our own story together. And so there are envelopes in the back. I encourage you to pick one up and to become one of the founding sustaining members of the Kaleo Center with a monthly gift. We also welcome one-time contributions, if that's something you would like to do. That all said, it is my honor and my deep delight to introduce Susan Raffo, who's going to work with us today in a conversation. Susan is a friend, a mentor, a writer, an organizer, and a practitioner of healing justice. She is beloved in the Twin Cities, and for good reason, and we are so just thrilled to be able to be with her this morning. Hello, welcome. And so thrilled, the Kaleo Center is so thrilled that we get to welcome all of you. So thank you so much, Susan, and come on up.
If I don't use the mic, and really honestly, people in the back, this is my voice. I will be using my voice to really feel you here and to connect with you. And I want to check and see, let me know if you get folks on there who say, this is my preference, just because then I can feel you more when I'm talking and can feel the echo of my voice coming back from you, right? Oh. So I'm not going to override the fact that physiologically to stand in front of a group of people, some of whom have taught you the very things you're going to be talking about, some of whom you don't know but know of, some of whom you don't know anything about at all. Like, evolution has told me that this should not be happening. I'm supposed to be already in relationship with you in some way, to know who your people are, to know where you come from, and there's a reason for us to be together. And so this is outside of pattern right now. And so I'm not going to override the fact that I can feel in my own body a bit of a flight response. You know, and I'm not afraid of you, and I am afraid of you. And that's just true, right? And so it is going to help. I'm going to echo what Liz said, is that if together we're holding this room, the part of me that is really going to attract everyone that comes in, partly because I don't know them, I want them to feel like that it's okay to come late, and all the cultural shit that, depending on how we're raised and what our traditions are, either make us bad or good or justified or not justified to come in late. Like, let's hold that together. So I'm going to start by, since we don't know each other yet, and since we are outside of a practice in which there's a reason to be here, I'm going to introduce myself slowly, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself to each other. And I could say so many things, because the Leo part of me would happily talk about healing justice for a while, but I don't know if those words are at all of interest or use to your lives. And so I'm much more interested in Liz not being embarrassed about her phone going off, and in whatever happens in this room, being one that's actually used to you. And my sense in being in this room, and there's maybe about 6, and I don't know everybody here, but there's at least 6 circles of people who came together in some relationship to each other, and then there's probably some individuals here who are just here by yourselves, right? So it's true. Let me slow down. So my name is Susan. Being in this room, it's important to tell you about who my people are and how I come to be in this space. Because my life, like your lives, is the sum total of countless generations of very real people who have made very real choices, and sometimes have very much not had choice, to survive, to celebrate, to be in relationship with themselves, with land and spirit, with their kin and community. And the sum total of all those moments is what brings me here. So 2 of my lines through my father come from what is now called Italy. Welcome. Welcome. No apologies necessary. Welcome. 2 of my lines come from what is now called Italy. Right? From the south and from the north. And for at least 10 that line has been on this land, both those lines, for 3 generations, very recent to this land. Came out of the reasons of poverty, but also came here without being aware that by coming here, they were then becoming in a process of becoming white. They were then in a process of re-engaging with and re-entrenching the poverty, displacement, and colonization of original peoples. And we're also benefiting from the resources of this country by coming to do better, that were existing because of the first original wound being the attempt to genocide indigenous peoples in colonization, the second original wound being the institution of slavery, in which bodies were turned into objects, real complex people with histories into objects, in order to build up the resources of this land for a few. So my Italian line came, have been here for 3 generations, in relationship to those 2 histories, many of whom are paying 0 attention to it and have rested within whiteness and said, great, we're fine now, and some of whom are not. Another line of my people are German. They've been here for 4 generations. They were Catholic. The Italians were farmers and stonemasons. The Germans were also farmers, also came for this concept of a better life, which is how the U.S. markets itself outside of the country, particularly to European people, and came here and have largely exist within whiteness. That line is very working class and is aligned with the unions, and is also been in aligning with the unions as a part of the history of racial exclusion within those unions. The 4th line that brings me here is my Anishinabeg line, my Anishinabeg and French line. And because of the boarding schools, while I was raised with the stories, I was not raised with knowing my tribe and my people. And I still don't, because there is no birth certificate. Right? And because when my great-grandparents left their reserve in Canada, I know we're Anishinaabe, I know we're from Canada, they left because, as my grandfather told me, who partially raised me, because they believed that this is the way that they could guarantee they could keep their children and be safe. Needing to disappear for anybody and believing that's your only option is not a choice. And it's still one my great-grandparents did. And so where those 4 lines bring me to right now, put that down is that I am in relationship to telling the truth about all of my people, not pretending anything that is not true about any of those. All identity is collective. It's not just individual. So the stories I know about all of those lines does not give me the benefit to say I am with a period at the end for any of those things. I am just the stories I was raised with. And then within that I hold constantly the way that how I look, my light-skinnedness, means that there's all kinds of things in the U.S. that I experience as a result of this. And there are things I don't experience as a result of this. And no matter how deep my work is, that's not going to shift the truth of this, at least not in my lifetime. And so the other part of this is that I am living on Dakota homeland while I am telling you the truth of my life. And I'm going to say more than just naming I'm on Dakota homeland. So I'm going to tell you what that means for me. First, I'm living on Oak Savannah. Right? I'm living in that place between the openness of the prairies and the fullness of arboreal forest, of woods. That place right between. I'm living on land that about 50 feet below our feet right now is sand. It is water that is rushing in directions towards springs, towards the Mississippi River. And so I'm living on lands that as little as 150 years ago was still, 170 years ago, was still primarily Dakota land. Minneapolis was still Dakota, even while St. Paul had already become colonized into European primarily. And so that means, to me, living on this homeland node means that I know people, there are Dakota people in my life, and many people I don't know, who come from a place where this concept of healing justice is not needed. Because there are traditions that have revolved over time, that knows about the medicine of this land, that has culture in relationship to what it means to live in winter. I mean, talk about override. We're sitting here in a room and we just had 12 inches of snow a day and a half ago. Like, that is a major override, right? But there are people who live in traditions that are connected to this land and are still fighting assimilation, are still fighting colonization in that, and also are claiming language and are in their own lives they're both fighting colonization and also still Dakota, still in relationship. And so for me, being on this land is never forgetting the truth of that. Also never forgetting that at the time of the Dakota War, that the same President Lincoln who made the decree to hang the 38+2 had also just signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And so I sit on the land that holds the tangling of the two original wounds of that, and I told you my family lines. I am in relationship to those two original wounds and how they show up here. And the other piece I want to remember is it's only been 7 generations that Minneapolis has known sexual violence and sexual harassment in the way that we know it now. Those things were European imports that came here, that were European wounds that existed before coming here and have been placed upon that land. So in this particular moment, as somebody who identifies as a woman, I want them to know. And so today I am here because Liz, who is beloved to me, said, would you talk about healing justice? There are so many people in this room I am in conversation with about that already. I could go in so many directions with that. And so rather than just thinking out loud about a direction, I want to know who you are. And so I'm going to turn the gaze from me for a second, and I'm going to slow this down and ask you just to notice yourself right now. We're still coming into the room. That's still what we're doing. How we come into a room matters so much for what we can do together. So I want you to bring your attention to yourself. Welcome. There was no. It's good to see you, though. So I want you to bring your attention. You can keep looking at me if you need to, but I actually want you to be greedy with your attention. So I want you to primarily notice yourself right now. And if it helps to look at me or to look at others and keep your eyes open, you are welcome to do that. If you want your eyes to be closed, you're welcome to do that. And you're going to hear people continuing to come in, and they are welcome. And that is fine. And so right now, I want you to bring your attention to your waist. And when I say bring your attention to your weight, I'm actually telling you to bring your attention to gravity. Our gift is that after birth, when every experience we've had has been in a fluid environment, the very first thing our body does, our first instinct, is to say hello to gravity, to wait. We didn't know it before birth. Gravity is this steady support that is always there. It is literally a direct relationship with this land right now. It's the perfect balance, gravity, between fluid, which is all possibility in all directions, space, which is full expansion, and stillness at a single point, which is what gravity pulls us to. So right now, just notice how gravity is impacting you. Can you feel it? No is a completely fair response. Do you feel it more in some part of your body than in others? What feels unique and specific as a physical thing to how gravity is showing up for you right now, or not? And with this awareness of gravity, feel from your feet up or from your butt up that gravity. Just be lightly curious. Invite your whole body, all 50-some trillion cells, to be in relationship to that gravity. You are just listening for what is the information that comes. Including, why are we doing this? My mind won't stop chattering. That's real information, not to be pushed away, just to see that it's true. And as much as you are able to feel yourself right now, be aware of your skin. This gorgeous natural boundary. For some reason, Spirit, Creator, decided that our life would come through as separate lives. And there's the skin. not you. And then extend that just to see how much of the not you can feel. Because again, of course, we are all connected all the time. And still, what is not you is not you. Just see what it is to feel out, to feel the room, to feel the people next to you. Just again, lightly curious about how much you can feel. And notice for yourself how much in this moment, right this second, as a concrete, physical thing, do you feel a part of the we in this room, as opposed to an I? Again, you're just listening for what is true, not trying to change it. And then with that, ask yourself, and listen. When you hear my question, notice if the front of your brain starts reaching for an answer, or if you're just listening to see if the answer comes from somewhere else. And to folks who are through Facebook Live, I hope you're doing this as well. Why are you here in this room right now? Or why are you listening to this from wherever you are? And then see if you can take that. And again, I recognize I'm moving a little bit quickly. So I just saw some nods, which I'm now even going to slow down a little bit. Why are you here right now, in this room, or listening to this? And as you listen, ask for one or two sentences, but don't tell the whole story. It's not possible always to tell the whole story with one or two sentences. But see if there's an image, a sentence, a personality, a memory, a prayer, a hunger, a certainty. And now start to bring your attention again into your weight, to how gravity is impacting your body right now. Noticing what is the same or different about the first time you did that. And on your own time, and be greedy about this, on your own time, you're going to bring yourself into the room. So that's going to mean you're going to start to bring your attention to the room. And then you're going to turn to one or two people next to you, and you're going to share briefly. So I'm going to give you about 6 to 7 minutes for this. Briefly, one or two sentences, a fragment about why you were here. So now, having heard that you're going to share that, take another second to feel what you want to say. It doesn't have to be the same thing as what came from you. They get to be separate. Here is what happens when we're in a room that we don't know each other in, where we're not sure why we're here, we don't have history with each other. And that's just real. And also noticing that you always have the option to not say anything. There's no shoulds here. This is an invitation. And I'm seeing somebody starting to bring their attention more into the space. Be greedy, like I said. So just because you've heard that doesn't mean you have to. But as you come into space, just look around, and I'm going to be tracking you all. And as you're ready, turn to somebody near you, one or two, and just share, why are you here?
We're like secret best friends.
Yeah, right. It's real public about that. We're actually real public best friends.
Yeah, we actually stand together.
Good spin.
Is really together. That solidified our rock solid. It's like this concept, justice and frustration that strikes a chord with everyone I feel a part of. The more I can do, the more I can participate in it.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, a lot of these conversations about justice and liberation and these things often feel like it's an ambiguous place. And I love these opportunities to actually get a lot of proportions. Even if, when I was sitting there, I was thinking, like, just like the facade, like, I'm making progress, I'm taking the next step, and that's my show. Like, because it feels sometimes like you're standing still so often that you have space for it. There's something being done, you can kind of partake in something that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for it, but something around that. What about you, Maddie?
That's like the best explanation I've ever heard.
The first thing that came up was like, I made a commitment to talk there. I was like, my calendar, I'm free to do this. And it's like, what? No, Liz actually pulled me out. I was like, I reached out to her and I was looking for something like this. And I was like, I need to commit to it more. Like, there's tension there always. But for me, it's about like, how do I actually practice it such that and actually set aside time or, energy to actually it's going to influence the work I'm doing at a bigger level.
Draw your hands to your sharing. Finishing it off. And then starting to bring your attention back into the room. Let's see if we can do this naturally. Just feeling the the silence start to fill up the room and really finish your thought how it should. But let's listen as how the silence fills up the room. And thank you for those of you who brought children today. Really thank you. To have and be in conversations about healing and healing justice separate from all the places we are in life. There are elders in this room, there are children in this room, and still most of us are probably in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe with, I'm guessing 30s and 40s maybe the biggest. Who knows? I don't know. But it's lovely to have children in this room. It doesn't happen often enough. Still, thank you, so thank you. Gratitude. And gratitude to Ariana, who's a beloved friend, who came up to me and noticed, wow, Susan, you are more afraid today than I usually see you in this moment. And the minute that she said that and I got to be seen by somebody who loves me and who just reminded me, we've got this together, we're all holding this, which brought up again, there's my conditioning about performance. There's all that tiresome shit that says I need to have the right answer for all of you. And so the gift of somebody who loves me, and then I opened my eyes and saw Montre giving me a great big grin. Yeah. So for those who are known and not known, for those who might be here by yourselves or who I don't know, may you be held in the relationships that are already here. And may those, whatever relationships are here, be part of what holds this room. I see a lot of people in the room. So you just heard your own words and you've heard somebody else. When I think about whatever story feels right to tell today, I want to listen to why you're here. And so I'm going to ask 5 different people to volunteer yourself. And if you're sitting in a clump of people you already know or people you were in conversation with, then maybe only one of you are going to talk, even though there's probably 10 different ways of saying what you're going to say. And those differences really matter. But from different geographies in the room, just 5 stories about why you are here, what you heard, that you feel that you can share. And out of that, that's going to help tell us why we're here today. And it's not going to be the whole story, and that's true. But it's just going to be something for the next hour, hour and a half. Right? The next hour. That's 5 minutes. So in a way, I know a lot of people in here in this room I know are not from here locally. Other people are here from locally. I noticed that no matter what, there's often a bunch of waiting that happens to see who's going to voice first. And so when that is held respectfully, really listening, that is welcome. If what's happening in you is I shouldn't talk first, I don't really have anything to say, then go ahead and challenge that. Respectful waiting to listen is welcome. You know, I shouldn't, I have nothing to say. Let's stretch that one. And so who would like to bring their voice into the room first? Why are you here? Or why did you hear from others that we are here? Please.
Good morning, my name is Renee. I just thought this was fascinating because, Susan, on my way here this morning, those were the exact questions I was asking myself. You know, why are you going here today? Why am I just not watching this on Facebook? Why am I going by myself? You know, so like, I was trying to answer those questions for myself a little bit. The words healing and justice, like you really relate to those and like those words. Other than, I was also like interested in what that is, what this is. I don't know. But as you do this exercise, and this is just the feeling thing. What I got as I expanded in the room was that this is about me
in you with what Renee said? And how does that move the we, in whatever way is true right now, a little bit closer? And for those who are not in the room, what you don't get with us right now is the physical connect, right? Because connection is physical. You know, it is something we can feel, and it's also energetic. And so you also get that. So I'm going to ask everybody in this room for just a second before the second person speaks, is whatever way is true in your own body, in your own way, is to reach out and to welcome. We don't know who they are and where they are. It doesn't matter. To just welcome them. Bring them also in, and you who are not here with us, know that we're doing this, and see what you notice in yourself. Just curiosity. Is this woo-woo? Is this real? It doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter. We're just playing. That's all. That's all. But we're also knowing that you're here. Who wants to be the second voice in the room? Please.
I'm going to stand up because I'm going to go after my friend Renee. It's really good to see you. So my name is Deanna Stancloud, and I'm very, very extremely local. I'm not very here. I had the opportunity to speak with Angie, and I feel like having a conversation with her, I realized that sometimes we don't know why we go. We follow an instinct, and sometimes we find out why we're there when we're here, or even after, or another door opens in the future. So, but I'm here to build a community. That's my first instinct, but maybe I'll know down the road. I see a whole bunch of friends now. So thank you.
Welcome, Deanna. So again, noticing what feels true in your body right now about what Deanna said. And noticing how what Deanna said is part of a we right now. And I'm going to keep going back and forth between this. What's true here? How do we feel it here? Back and forth. Welcome. There's a third voice in the room. Why are you here? Why are we here?
My name is Arna.
Hey, Arna.
And I think I'm just offering my voice in the room too, because what I'm doing is very different. I'm in the room based almost entirely on connections and relationships that I already had. Right? Like I love Susan and trust Susan. She's someone who is like someone I'm committed to making the world with. Right? And there's a few of you who are already committed to making the world with. So when you enter a space, I enter that space with curiosity because we already have a relationship. And so when there was the invitation to like extend out into the we, I actually was really resistant. Because at this point in my life, like knowing, knowing who can go to places I need to go is really important. And it doesn't mean that no one else is allowed into the we. It just means that that's, for me, not it's not an automatic openness. There's some caution and something.
Thank you, Anna. And again, everybody first notice inside. Lots of head nods for this as well. Notice what it does to the sense of the room right now each time. The I and the we. It's just real. Just notice. Fourth voice in the room. And what we just heard when I said fourth voice in the room was one of the children in the back went, "Oh!" And I'm not going to interpret that, but I'm going to mean, and I'm going to bring it up a little bit later, is any system or culture or tradition that is not centered children's voices is doomed to live outside of history and history and future.
And so the Western world is just starting to notice the truth, what all traditional communities know, all people who need to protect their children to survive already know. So the ACEs study is this Western piece that is saying, oh look, what we experience as children determines what we experience as adults, determines lots of things. We already all know that. We know that in our bodies. We know that. It's systems that have forgotten that. It's habits and conditioning that's forgotten that. So it is appropriate that the fourth voice in this room was a child's voice, and that was the fourth voice in this room. And thank you again. I have gratitude for those who got children. Welcome. Thank you. That's the fourth voice in the room. And I also can't say that without also bringing in all of the fact that everybody in this room who's not currently a child was once a child. And was either had the experience of being at somebody's center or not. And so I'm going to remember that too. Fifth voice in the room for now, and there'll be more time to talk. The fifth voice in the room.
I'm here because I have a deep connection to this sense of the energy that you bring to the room. And I have many friends that I know who are here that are part of faith organizing. I also have many friends who, and faith organizing and commitment to nonviolence, but I also have many friends who are, their expression is very different of that, people who are involved in Antifa and in different places. And when I bring that, like it matters what energy we bring to this, people kind of shut that down. But it's very much more where I feel called. I have conflict between, there are things that I do because I think they're important, marching and door knocking, and those things that are not where I feel called. And so this conflict and this sort of sense of how the energy we bring impacts in real ways whatever we're entering into and whatever relationship we're entering into, whether that's how people want to run or march. That's a conflict, something I'm trying to figure out.
So again, also notice within you and in the room. So for those who just came in, what we did was, this is slow introducing, how we enter space. I said in the beginning that we're out of pattern right now. There are groups of people who know each other, but we don't all know each other. We don't know why we're here. We don't know what the traditions are that we come from, the people who are behind us, the family and the cultures who made us, who said, I see, we don't know those things right now. And we're in a room where I'm in the front of the room. You're coming because there's a story that was told, that I have something to say that might touch on something that you want to hear and that you're hungry for. Or that the conversation is you might hear that from each other. So we did a grounding here in individual bodies, and then extended to how do we feel the we in relationship to that. And I asked people, why are you here within that? And then they listened to themselves and listened to each other, and then out of that came 5 voices. So there are about 4 people who came in after that intro, so just so you know that's what we had. So just do it quick, notice yourself, come back to your weight to gravity, and I'm going to do the same, and we're all listening, that's what we're doing. Right? We're listening for what comes next. Right? And it's my responsibility to hold the circle and to hold this space. So I'm listening for what I'm going to do next based on what I've heard from you. But you're also listening. So just check out your relationship to gravity again. Again, noticing what is the same or different right now as the other times you checked. And for those who just come in, what is your own relationship to the 50 trillion cells inside you that have a relationship to this pull of the earth, as well as the expansion of the space around us? So what I heard in the room was, I wasn't sure why I was coming, but I was following a sense that I should be here. And as I'm in the room, what I'm noticing is healing justice. There's something about that I know, but I also want to hear more from people in here about how they talk about this. I heard a desire for deepened relationship and connection, right? The relationship. I heard I'm here because of a very specific relationship. And even being in here, that doesn't mean, that I trust everybody here automatically. So what does it mean to be in this space with the truth of that? Is what I'm hearing from that. I heard children reminding us that they are still at our center. And that anything we do today has to serve their children and those children after. Otherwise, why are we doing it? And then I also heard, really concretely, as someone who does organizing work, how am I sitting in relationship to that work where the energy, the field, whatever this is that we're doing here, actually sits within organizing work? When sometimes it's seen as being the stuff that gets in the way, it's woo-woo, it's a number of different things. Is that a fair hearing of what the voices are said in the room? And I know there's other things in. So now I'm going to be like, where do we start? I'm going to take a drink of water. Every single one of us, I'm going to say things that everybody in this room knows. I'm going to say that right now. And we know it in ourselves. I'm also going to say that in this room there are traditions that have other ways of talking about this. And so anything that I say is meant to be poetry and not prose. I see evolution as poetry, not prose. I don't really care about facts. Facts are this thing that are true if it's concrete between us. I mean, I actually care deeply about facts. But I don't. There are things that have happened that I'm not going to say, right? But that's true in me. So I have a fight response that comes up that says, not on my watch will the denial of elements of this history happen. Not on my watch. Not on my watch will violence happen again or continue. That is clear. And then I'm in relationship every day to sort through what that means. So yes, facts. But a conversation about what's a fact and what's not a fact, that's a hard one. And so as I talk about evolution as poetry, and I'm going to bring it in because it's useful for me, that means it's more about what comes up in you as you hear it. And I honor that many in this room have origin stories and traditions that don't use evolution, and they are equally real and equally valid. And I'm more interested in how we come together and share what is different and similar about those than compete over which one is right. I use evolution, it works for me. So it is our birthright in this room, when we are born, every one of us, to be protected and loved and celebrated. It is why children are at the center, with elders at the other center. We'll talk about that in a second. But it is our birthright, when we are born, to be held so that there are people who are making sense of life for us, that is culture, that's tradition, that's founded in ceremony, but in a way that is supporting our liberation. Meaning, liberation is about connection, right? It is that I am connected to those I know. There's a space for new connection where I can pretty much guarantee that I can go up and make a choice as to whether or not this connection should be here, without all of the external violences and dangers and factors that tell me it's potentially not safe to be, or it really is not safe. Liberation is being able to have choice, right? And not choice the way capitalism teaches us, but choice as in what most serves my and our life right now. Right? So it's our birthright, and we have all the tools. We have the tool to say, I need to get out of this situation because it's not good for me or for us. I need to leave, or I need to engage with the situation. And I want to be clear that a fight response is not just no. A fight response is yes. Which is why when Ariana said to me, I see you, right now I felt this, yes, which helped me to be here, seeing people I love, yes. So fight response often gets talked about as though it's this no. Fight response is yes, it's both. It is I want this or I don't want this for my life. We have that. We have that when we're born. All the tools we need to have that. We have the tools needed to sort of pause for a second and to check, what the hell is going on in here right now? What do I need to do? Every cell in our body, our outside brain, evolution has given us our skin. That when we were first developing as an embryo, the skin and the brain were the same thing. And then at one point they separated. And they only separated in the way it looks, but they're not separate. And so our skin actually exists to tell us what's happening in the room around us and the skin that goes into our ears. It is not random and coincidental that for white supremacy to exist, it needed to turn skin into something that could not be trusted. That is not random. None of this is random. Because this is how we know it's safe. And this and the things we feel and all the rest of it. So it's our birthright, right? We have that. And it is cultures and traditions that have evolved over multiple generations in relationship to the land upon which they are, to the people who are around them, with all of the, everybody's real people. People are shitty to each other, people make mistakes, so let's get away from all the romanticization that happens here. I'm just talking about relationship in life, right? Is a culture that has been able to evolve over generations, be in relationship to where we are, to the people around us, etc., figures out what it means to teach your children. What do you need to teach your children to survive here, in order to live here in relationship to this, right? So healing is something that is always needed. Healing is not just about oppression and dominance. We grieve. Life is hard. People we love get hurt, right? People do really shitty things to each other. Like, all that stuff just happens, right? It happens even when we're grounded. It does. Life is hard, right? So healing is something that is there, that is the let me support, let me hold space for the reconnection of you within yourself. Healing is about remembering who you are, about getting the kind of care that's needed. Literally, my leg is bleeding. It's practical, it's physical, it's spiritual, it's energetic. It's about coming back into a right relationship with myself, with my kin and my community, with land and spirit. That's what healing is. If we didn't have systems of dominance and oppression, we would not need healing justice. Okay? They are the same thing, they're overlapped, but they're not the same thing. And I keep wanting to do that, because multiple things that are happening right now about our right to heal. Absolutely. How strange is it that we have to reclaim our right to heal within a system that's turned our bodies into commodities that if they're unwell, they need to be in a place that treats them as a commodity and fixes them or tells us they're broken and in what way they're broken. So reclaiming our right to heal on our own terms is huge. Healing justice is about the time in which we're doing it and the histories that we've done this. I was like, what else needs to be heard? Timing is exquisite. So I mentioned all my traditions in the front. One of the things that I'm listening for is that I don't want to be, I'm listening for you all, for this room, and I don't want to be just talking at folks, but I also know that I am talking, and there's things I want to say. So I'm letting you know that I was raised where interrupting is okay. And it's important to say that. That isn't true for everybody. But in my family, interrupting is a way of saying, yes, and go deeper, and never do that. So I'm going to keep tracking, but there's enough people in the room that it's hard to hold all of you in that way. So I'm going to ask you to interrupt, right? Because I'm going to talk, and I'm going to pause sometimes, and listen, and we'll listen together. And we'll see where this conversation goes in that way. So healing justice is something, healing justice is something that all of us know. It's ancient. There's nothing I'm about to say that hasn't been remembered and known multiple times in all of the traditions that all of us come from. Some of us, it is still remembered and was not forgotten. Some of us, particularly the Euro folks in here who are multiple generations, it was probably forgotten about 1,000 years ago. And that's about European history and colonization. I separate Jews from Christians in this moment when I say that. Those histories are not the same and that matters. But there's forgetting that's happened, and still, 50,000 years, if you believe in evolution, is how long we've been Homo sapiens together. So remembering has been longer than that. So everything I'm about to say we all already know, but what does that mean in this context and time? Healing justice is a phrase that Quakers and Friends have been using to name their prison abolition work for, I think, about 3 generations. But the way it's moved into this work is a beloved friend of mine, and for some of the people in this room, Kara Page, was part of something called the Kindred Heal and Justice Collective. It was a collective across the South. And Kara first named this concept of healing justice in relationship to the U.S. Social Forum in 2007 when it happened in Atlanta. And I want to name that because the phrase of healing justice and some of the organizing, because of where it comes out, really comes out of queer black women organizing together in the South, and naming their work as healing justice, right? And so the U.S. Social Forum movement, for those who don't know, is a movement that started outside the U.S., and it started around the increasing of global wealth, around the WTO and IMF. And a number of people who were working to fight the globalization of poverty, about the accrued globalization of wealth, the movement towards a smaller number of multinationals holding wealth, created a convening around the social forums with this idea, with the language that another world is possible. And the point of the convening is for people around the world to come together and to just share. Here, let me share with you how we are resisting global capitalism, how we are remembering who we are. Let me just share. And so in Atlanta, at one point, I believe at the social forum in Mumbai, India, folks in the front of the room said, another world is possible, but for another world to be possible, another U.S. is necessary. Because there are a lot of U.S.ers who were going there. And they very much made the distinction in that moment, when they said another U.S. is necessary, between people who are native to this land, people who came here not by choice, and then people who are here by choice. And so when they're talking about the U.S., they're also talking about the relationship with people who came by choice or who exist in some way receiving the benefits of the U.S. And they also looked and said, in a global sense, another U.S. is necessary. So out of that came the first U.S. Social Forum, which was supposed to be in New Orleans, and then Hurricane Katrina happened. And so all of the people involved in organizing to that social forum went to New Orleans to be involved in what it means to be in the right relationship to people who are impacted by Katrina. So the social forum was first in Atlanta, then it was in Detroit. And that's where this concept of healing justice, that language came up, right? And from the beginning, one of the things that we've said about healing justice is that healing justice asks a couple of questions. I was in Atlanta and I was in Detroit. So I'm also saying when I say we, it's because I was in those spaces. Is that there's a few things that we know. One is we all come from cultures and traditions that remember how to grieve, how to deal with pain, how to be in relationship to each other. There is a reason why colonization's first tool of conquest is to force away a people's language, practice, tradition, belief. Because that is how we remember ourselves and remember who we are. That's where we go to tolerate the intolerable. And so, no matter what, the first point is remembering that that is true. The second point is remembering that those histories are not done, is that right this second in this room they are operating. Always. 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 They internalize within us. The systems we are seeking to change as organizers are also held within our bodies. Whether that is internalized dominance or internalized oppression or a mix of those. And if I take that away from that kind of language and just say it is the places where our body has learned to either constrict, to pull away, or to push out, or to disappear, all without thinking about it. Well done. No worries at all. All of that comes up before cognitive thought. So we also said that is also true. How do we hold the truth of that in rooms? When we've also been conditioned in the West, and I'm going to be careful about this we, because I don't actually think everybody in this room has been conditioned in this way. But certainly what the U.S. education system seeks to teach, it's thank God not always successful. And I also hold there all of the teachers I love who are working to make this not true. But what the system seeks to do is, I think, therefore I am. I'm going to organize in ways that are often more abstract, right? As opposed to actually being in here. That piece. And we also recognize that urgency is real. That we're in this contradiction where to do the work of changing habits and patterns needs time and space, and people are dying. And that is true. So we sat and said, how do we sit in relationship to that truth? And then look for ourselves and notice To feel right with that truth, that contradiction, what choices have we made to privilege which side of that? And I use choice very carefully here, because not all of us can choose. And probably because you chose to come in this room, for the people in this room right now, there might be an element of choice in it. Maybe not. I don't know, I'm just listening. That's complicated, so let's let that be complicated. There's not a right answer, just let's let it be complicated. So that contradiction. The other piece that we talked about is that the very medical system that holds many of our beloved people who can't come to this room, who don't have access to the People's Movement Center, or who don't have access to the cultures and traditions that they come from, separate from the people who are in that room who are trying to do differently, are not the place where healing happens necessarily. And that the very medical system comes out of a history that is tied to the two original wounds of this land, attempted genocide and the institution of slavery, through many things, including the history of eugenics. So we held that, and we said, doing healing work, we have to tell that story. Because what we also know is that many of us, all of us, just through basic biology, is that there are two things are true. We don't want to change, and we want to feel better. Right? And that's just, no matter who we are in the room, that's it. Oh, change is hard. For the body, change has the potential to feel like dying. Right? So change is hard. We don't want to change, and we want to feel better. And so because of that, at the social forums, we said we want to support healing spaces to exist, but we also don't want to have the healing space be this thing that is always completely separate from how intense and hard the work is that we have to do. Because they're not. Organizing and healing are the same thing. It's the wounds that separated them, right? One's working with the collective body, one's working with the individual body, one's working with the individual. They both do both. They just have different patterns and habits of doing it. They get to come back together. And at the same time that we need space where it's not always about the shit. Again, healing is all about contradiction.
Susan, could you project to Facebook Live? They're having trouble hearing.
Totally. Is this better? I can start to use the mic if I need to. There's also more bodies. Here?
I think projection will.
Okay, projection. From my belly, there's singers in this room. I know they just say this. I mean, seriously, bring yourself into your belly a little bit to help me come into mine, because my nervousness is bringing my voice up. Yeah.
Hey, Susan. I was with you up until 5 minutes ago, and then it started getting super abstract.
Okay.
Could you give us some examples?
So tell me what was abstract.
I don't even know. I was so not following in that last part. It's there was this and there was that, and we're not in communication with each other. And
I did go off. No, I totally did. Yep, Diane?
Yeah, I was going to say, so what struck me, maybe you can say more about this, organizing and healing are the same thing. They're separate.
Yep. Is that getting?
Sure,
kind of
totally.
Meaning, abstractly. I was feeling it.
You said it. So
Yeah, no, totally. I'm going to. Yeah. Please.
I think as you were speaking too, I felt like you were taking us on this journey that was going very quickly, right? And things you were saying, I was really connected with, and then I was also reflecting on my own journey, saying, "Wow, we're going down this journey at light speed right now." Reclaiming our bodies, right? And I was like, yes, the first step to healing is always reclaiming our bodies, and we cannot have an us without reclaiming our bodies first, right? And that another US is not actually another literal place, but a different people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that, I was like, okay, yes, but we're going down this journey really at light.
Thank you. All three of you. Thank you. So I'm going to slow myself down right now. And invite everybody else to slow down. And the way that we slow is we come back into gravity into our bodies. Organizing and healing are the same thing. Trauma is a form of disconnection. That's what it is, literally, in the body. I love it. bunch of stones and rocks. They're like magnifying gravity. Trauma is a form of disconnection. That is true when it is what happens to an individual body. That is true when it is repeated over generations. Systems are set up, systems of dominance and control, to maintain that disconnection. Within white supremacy, there needed to be something created to support Euro-descended people to live with the profound values contradiction that it means to be Euro-descended in this country. And to feel okay about themselves, and I bring myself in through my 3 lines, ourselves. Trauma is disconnection. Systems of supremacy and control are put into place to normalize that trauma, and then to create stories that justify it. Not for everybody, but for those who benefit from it. Trauma is disconnection. Organizing, often, although not always, works with shifting those systems. Thank God. Because it is urgent. Those systems need to change. Sometimes organizing happens where the body is also brought into the room. Often, sometimes, the survival response to urgency is to do exactly what I was just doing. Go at light speed, as fast as possible. When we go fast, physiologically, we make decisions through the executive function of our body. So what that means is the gorgeousness of our central nervous system, our brain and spinal cord, is looking for information and is making decisions about that information. It's awesome. It's great. And once you're 26, it's not new anymore. That doesn't mean it isn't powerful, but that system is in a process of emerging until around 26. It's not an exact date, click the button changes. It varies by person, but we are becoming when we are young. Doing things through an executive way, which is speed thinking through all of this, can be transformational. If I have a conversation with somebody about life that I've never had a conversation with before, there will be entirely new ways of looking at that and experiencing that that are liberatory. So liberation can happen that way. And still, it is about shifting the patterns of things that we already know. Western culture privileges it hugely. When that's all that we're doing, we're also in our survival response that is constantly this way, right? Organizing sometimes is constantly this way. It's like the body is this. And again, let me hold the contradiction. It's fucking urgent. There's a reason for it. That's not just, God, just relax on it. You know, it's like, let's get real. It is urgent, and it does in the body. It replicates this sense of like, we've got to be safe. We've got to be safe now. Which is absolutely sometimes true in that moment, and sometimes it's perceived to be true in that moment. Because our body's already taken that form. Again, not perceived in the broader truth, but in that present moment. So organizing, thank God for organizing. There becomes this strange argument sometimes between these things, which is a false argument. Thank God for organizing. It's this way, right? It's executive function. When you just said, when Jopa just said coming into the body, there's the other part. So slow down, Susan. Just feel it before I say it. Is the body is a bottom-up piece. This is where newness has the potential to happen. Right? And by that, if you want, I can talk about the physiology of the body, how the body processes information, but all the organizers already know this. This is grassroots organizing of the body. You know, grassroots organizing in the body is what we do whenever we're in a space and we let those who are most impacted by whatever it is we're talking about, where those who are most impacted by whatever we're talking about are naming their truth, right? And are either supported or don't need the support to define what the answers are in this moment that goes forward. That's what grounded organizing is, cultural grassroots organizing. Well, the body has a form of grassroots organizing as well. And the way that happens is we also have to listen to this. All of our histories, the history within our present moment, that your life has experienced, your individual life, and the histories of your people before are held here. When the social forum movement said another U.S. is necessary, thank you again, Jennifer, for what you said, is that is about listening. What is it that's here? What is the body of the people who live on this land right now with the truth of the histories of this land and all of the ancestors behind every person in this room who is in some way, depending on whether you've been here forever, you were native to this land, or you did not choose to come here, or at one point you came, you have those stories in here, the sediment of each generation that created this present moment. So listen to what's happening inside you right now. Listen for potentially more concreteness that needs to happen, for sure. What's in the room? I just put a bunch of words out there. What are you hearing? Is this better? This is probably better. It's so artificial. I'm going to try. I'm going to privilege my own ability to be here this way. Maybe. So while technology is being worked with,
Don't want to give them seasickness.
Please.
It's, as somebody who often operates at hyperspeed, it's simultaneously a relief and also really counterintuitive to slow down and to ground, because I just want everybody else to have that information, which is also prioritizing my head brain, that I want to give information that I have here to somebody else as opposed to showing by, neuron mapping or connecting by just being and teaching somebody else how to be by being. Yeah, I don't know. That's something that I really struggle with.
I'm noticing that my organizer and facilitator brain kind of would like to ground and an example. And I have my own example that I can offer where, I think about, where the trauma is the disconnection and the healing is the organizing, where that happens in our individual bodies and also in our collective body. And so when someone's life is stolen by the state, that's a trauma that's experienced by a person and a family, but also there's the healing work that happens around that person and that family. But the organizing, right, is to end the system that ever allows that to happen again. And so, that's the meaning that I'm making. And anyway, that's I'm noticing that I'm needing to try and ground in what's an example of how the healing is the work.
I'm realizing that I work often more one-on-one. How is this happening in your life right now, in your work? And so I keep going like this to hold everybody, and I need to just come right back down here. So healing and organizing. Again, what came out of the social forum is a couple of very concrete examples. First, when people are organizing, have somebody on your team who is paying attention during moments of strategy in terms of organizing, who's going to ask those questions around what's getting forgotten while you're moving forward. So, for example, yes, it is possible to do all of these things within the next year. Is it fully necessary? Can it be done differently? Where are the spaces going to be within the next 10 years? So some of it is about just bringing in people who are paying attention to how the collective nervous system is holding, right? And that's something that I do a lot, and a lot of people do. The other piece, and I'm now going to step back and go broad and then come closer down, is that when I talk about healing as three things. And not that they are, but it helps me to organize my brain. The first one is stopping the violence. The first step of healing is stopping violence, always. Right? Because there's no way to have space if there's violence that's happening right now. Stopping the violence is both concretely what is happening here, and it's also about how it's experienced in your body perceived. I am currently getting to do work and be in relationship with some people who are currently incarcerated, who are having conversations about how are they bringing healing work, what does that word mean, into a space where there's zero control over time, space, etc. together. What does that mean? Where is the space that is yours, right? Well, that's the inside self, right? And so the conversations that we're having is what's the work to do, what's the connecting to do that says, I got you, I see you, and you can pull apart. Where are the places we can find 2 minutes, not we, because I'm not incarcerated right now, so they can pull aside and have 3 minutes, 5 minutes to just breathe. How much coming back here can you do in 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, right? To remember, right? So at a planning, strategizing, it's bringing a body in who's going to hold that in a bigger way, but it's also bringing some practice to do that in the immediate point, right? So again, stopping the violence. Concrete, right now, if it's happening in this room, that's what has to happen, period. But also recognizing that there's the history of violence that shows up in my body, which means suddenly in this room with all of you, what's happening? So stopping the violence is what are the practices that I have to remember who I am right now. And within that urgency, I always think in terms of stopping the violence, again, of how good systems of supremacy are and how good capitalism is for making operating at fast speed to be U.S. normal, although that's not true for everybody in this room, but U.S. normal, so that everything constantly feels for the body like an emergency, which then gets in the way of actually showing up in those moments where it has to end now. Being able to discern between those two things. No, now. Not, oh my God, I have so much to do tomorrow and I'm overwhelmed. No, now. Right? So stopping the violence is also being in a practice to perceive the difference here. The second part is self-care, which thank God there's so many people who are talking about it in self-care practice. And to me, self-care is about not increasing the bullshit. Is it okay that I swear for children in the room? A little too. I know it's too late. I'm going to stop. This is my son for children season and ask oh, sheepishness.
She just keeps saying, I shouldn't say that.
I'm going to stop. Self-care is the act of remembering. Remembering that you're alive. And so that is so many things. You don't have to take a class for that, although you can. Right? Again, those are the traditions that if you're raised in a family culture with kin who have ceremony, who have ritual, who have practices, who sing together, who walk together, who laugh together, who tell particular kinds of stories together, that's self-care. It's remembering yourself, right? Because what trauma does is trauma disconnects from life, and systems that support trauma, systems that exist so that trauma continues, have very little interest in you remembering who you are. So self-care. And then the third one is shifting how history is held in the body. That's deep healing. Can you say that again? Shifting in how history is held in the body. I'll say more about that in a second. Before I say more about
I'm missing what is held in the body?
how history is held in the body. Yeah. And by body right now, I'm talking physical. So there's a physical collective body. So conflict is one of the ways that history shows up in the collective body. And I'm also, because you feel conflict, it's a physical thing. right? And it's a physical thing in your own body, right? So deep healing, shifting how history is held in the body, that can happen by stopping the violence. I remember when somebody intervened on violence that was happening directed towards me by a loved one. And I was probably about 18. And for the first time in my life, somebody came up and said, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. That was deep healing. That was deep healing to have my life, to witness my life mattering that much to somebody else. So stopping the violence in concrete ways, in the moment, being in touch with this fight response, yes, no, inside, can be deep healing. Self-care can be deep healing. Because self-care is cumulative, right? If I'm suddenly saying, I matter so much that I am going to figure out the kind of space I can take. I am going to ask you to sing with me. I am going to not show up tonight. I'm going to rest. That is cumulative. At one point, you're suddenly sitting or stretching or listening or laughing or singing, and something much bigger happens. And you're not the same person as you were before. Okay? And then there's another place where deep healing can be intentional, and I'm a body worker. So what that means is I have a practice that I've learned, which is about listening to the person who I'm with, to their tissues. And I'm listening for the difference between where their body is expanding and contracting, is in its own self, and where there's restriction and hold. And then I'm with them and I'm engaging with them around that. What is this? What's here? You know? And again, not saying here's how it has to shift, but is in support of a shift that the body wants to have happen. All trauma is collective. All healing is collective. We experience it individually. We experience it collectively as well. You're right. Thanks, Ari. Yeah. So now I'm going to stop and we're all going to listen. Arna, is that getting to more examples? Let me just listen to your question and see if there's anything else to say about that. I'm really lucky. My practice, I would say 75% of my practice right now is organizers. Because, you know, and I have profound respect, no disrespect to everybody in this room who's over 35, but let me just tell you, the organizers who are under 35, who I'm seeing, like there's a whole bunch of people who get this in ways that it took me so many years to get this. And I have a lot of folks who've been coming to me and saying, I want to be doing this work and I can feel how it's held here and I want them to come together. And I'm just noticing many people do it, but I'm particularly noticing that folks who've just been on this particular life for less, there's more who are coming. And I'm grateful for that.
I think one thing that I wanted to lift up as you were talking was that we are, like, I keep feeling that we're looking to things outside of us to heal, right? And that healing is an action we take for others, but healing is actually found within yourself, right? And it's like that moment you were giving that example of healing as an 18-year-old, that was very internal. You know, like that person, yes, they stood up for you, but that healing that needed to happen from that 18 years of violence or misalignment, like that happened within yourself, right? And so, like, I think that's maybe where it feels ambiguous, right? And maybe that's the place that folks never need to start, right? Is like, how does healing, like, what is healing inside of me?
Thank you. Thank you. Which helps me to then hear another note to come in. So thank you for holding that in this room. And then I'm better.
And I would also say healing is also very relational. Quite often it doesn't. It happens in relationship with others who are there in a way to help us claim our agency. In a way to holding space, the invitation, helping us reposition ourselves, which I think your personal story really helps illustrate.
So, yeah. Thank you. Diane?
I was going to say, so it's really helpful here, you know, there's this outside organization and there's the inside organization, because trauma disorganizes
other voices in the room who are noticing what's coming. Go ahead, Liz.
So it's 10:30.
Yeah, thank you.
Diane, what I thought of when you said that was so like, oh my gosh, yes, is that in my experience of existing within systems of whiteness that need and want me to produce in a particular way to protect the system of whiteness, part of how a discourse of healing is used that I think this challenges so deeply is that you have to have it all together. That the purpose of healing is to wrap it up so that you can go back out there. And this is like not that, which is why it is so challenging to intersecting systems of oppression.
I'm also noticing the like real distinction between like self-care as it's talked about in sort of whiteness, which is about like pampering or something, and self-care, which is about remembering oneself. And then while you were saying that, I was like, oh yeah, and when you really get there, you then remember others as well.
So one of the collective healing rearrangings that I think that wants to happen, that has to happen, is that, and I'm actually speaking to the folks who are part of faith-based communities here, and specifically, while this room is, I don't even think this room is majority white, which is awesome, but that specifically talking to white faith-based folks here, there's a big part of whiteness where healing is about settling the nervous system and feeling better. Yeah, right? So even things that gather around the concept of peace and justice is sometimes like how I can feel better right now, right? Settling. And I've noticed when I've gone and sometimes spoken to congregations, I can feel that settling in the room, that is a practice that's happening. And so settling is something that folks who are white have, as, and people who also who are mixed who look like me, have as an option that's available, right? Is to learn skills to settle. When I'm like, actually, let's not settle. That's, which is again being in right relationship to the true pain and struggles that's right now. Not turning it into a story and getting overly dramatic and performing, but literally feeling. We are all connected. We know that. Your pain is mine. We have the capacity to feel that. And then, again, it's where self-care is completely different from those who don't have the option to walk outside and settle themselves, right? That's an entirely different thing. Please, may there be space that is safe for settling to happen. So self-care is not an equal opportunity moment here. What we all need is significantly different. And we saw it in the room without any assumptions about the people who spoke and about the full truth of what they said. Even coming into this room has different meaning. I left, and all of us, many of us probably have versions of both of those things, right? So thank you for that, because even bringing in self-care is, the question is, and I would then hazard to make this a little universal, is, as I'm settling right now, for what purpose and why? For what purpose and why? Please.
I've been noticing the pain in my shoulder for the last several minutes, and part of me has been trying to release that, and I'm glad. Thank you for making the space for like being attentive to what the pain is and not trying to just placate it, wanting to feel better, but to just feel it.
And healing is deeply local. And so I'm going to make that about 5 minutes. That's why I start saying these are Dakota homelands. There is history here. If organizers in our work is not being clear about the local that is here, then there is work that is happening on top of that one, always. Healing is also local in the individual body, right? So even listening and pay attention to pain, it's where without a shared collective means for being in relationship to that, do we listen to it? Do we have somebody else hold it? I mean, those are where, coming to what you said, that's a uniquely specific moment that might be individual, might be collective, based on what's in the room, but it is specific. And so the reason we slow down is to start to tune into more, because speed is about not being able to hear, just like the image of going really, really fast and everything suddenly blurs on its side. So, it's about 10:35 now, running at 10:45. So this is not done. Come back into gravity. either on your own or with others, whatever feels most true for you. I'm going to do the same with you. And just noticing what is true for you right now, whatever it is. Noticing the questions you still have, the oh yes, oh no, whatever that is, the between. Just noticing what's true. And in a second, I'm going to invite us all to talk at the same time, because we're too many to circle out. But everyone in this room has something that they either wanted to say or wanted to hear. There's something I said that frustrated the crap out of you, or there's something I said that you wanted more of, it just didn't make sense. Or whatever you needed in coming here hasn't been touched. Right? Or all kinds of other things. So in a second, I'm going to count to 3, and we're just going to say whatever it is into the room, right? And then at one point, we're going to see if there's a natural arc, and it ends by itself. And if it doesn't, then at one point I'll end it to honor time. And I'm just saying right this second, before we do this, we are in the womb right now, including how words are coming through me, how we are in relationship to each other. It's all here right now, while we're trying to ask and be in relationship to how we should be. Right now. So whatever words or feeling or sound without words is welcome, is going to help to end this moment, to transition for you, to then leave the space. Literally anything is welcome. I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to start talking to help with any shyness. And you enter with your voice as and when you're ready. Is that clear what I'm inviting? Mm-hmm. And for people who are coming through Facebook Live, you go there. 1, 2, 3. There is so much
A little bit less.
As you leave, if there are any amends that I need to make because anything I've said in some way disappeared you and your people, I'm here for that always after the end of talking, so that you don't have to leave carrying that by yourself. And outside of that, we are living in a moment and on a land where it is winter and there was a lot of snow 2 days ago. You know, and if we were living in relationship to that, we would be slower right now. So as you leave, knowing that you're all going to different places, holding different things, be safe. If there's any slowness that you can bring in today that feels good and nourishing for you, may you have some today. If there's any questions and follow-up, you can find me through the People's Movement Center that's outside of amends for now. And may whatever work we do today and moving forward be in relationship to the healing that our ancestors still want, to the healing that this space calls for, with deep gratitude for everyone in this room and how you are showing up in the ways that make sense to you, to shift the patterns that hurt to ones that